Hello, and welcome to Nomadic Diaries, the re-entry series. I'm Doreen Cumberford, the host.
And I'm Linda Mueller, the co-host.
Hello, this is Linda Mueller here with Repatriation Diaries. This month, Doreen Cumberford and myself are here to inform, impact, and inspire your repatriation journey. Today, I'm going to read to you from Arriving Well, Stories about Identity, Belonging, and Rediscovering Home After Living Abroad. Before I get started, I'm going to warn you that I will attempt to pronounce a few words in French, and it may not go well. So please forgive me. I apologize in advance. Home is the people I love, and they're everywhere. The story is called Homeland. Melissa Dalton-Bradford is the author. Bucks County, Pennsylvania is the stuff of Currier and Ives paintings. Give or take a few telling details. Give a few SUVs, take the one-horse open sleighs. It's a modern version of an implausibly pristine swath of historic Americana. 200-year-old farmhouses and covered bridges, snaking stone walls encircling horse farms, and the horses themselves draped in garnet and green blankets, their glossy heads wreathed with puffs of steam. Everything throughout this landscape bespeaks ease, comfort, home. Terre riche, or rich soil, I had told our neighbors in Croissy-sur-Seine, a suburb of Paris, when I explained where exactly we were moving in the U.S. I then listed some of Bucks County's noted local authors and artists like James Michener, Margaret Mead, Pearl S. Buck, Oscar Hammerstein. If Bucks had been good enough for the likes of them, then surely... Did I maybe have a few niggling concerns? 10 years is a long time, I realized, to live outside of our homeland. During that decade, our family had integrated deeply in Norway and France. Of our 4 children, only the 2 eldest had been born in the U.S., and they had been toddlers when we'd left New Jersey Turnpike for the Nordic tundra. We'd schooled them in Norwegian and had all learned fluent Norwegian. The youngest 2, born in Oslo and Versailles, had been in the French school system, and we had all learned to speak fluent French. Now, were we settling? Our passports said we were going back to our native country, but it was a country our children didn't know. Would they eventually come to know it? Would we, parents, know it? And as important, would it know us? Welcome to the neighborhood. A spry brunette dressed in an oversized Phillies t-shirt certainly seemed happy to get to know us. Handing me a plastic container of oven-warm brownies, she appeared at my front door the same hour the moving crew pulled up and chattered as if we'd known each other for years. You got all you need here, blue ribbon schools and blue ribbon beer, she assured me. Did I look bewildered? Don't worry, I can show you the whole area, she said, since I've lived here in the same 300 square mile radius practically my whole life. Kindergarten to senior prom. Went down to Temple for college. She hardly took a breath, but honestly couldn't wait to get back home. Here she was, living proof of so many qualities that when living abroad and sticking up for the States in conversations with my non-American friends, I'd cited as our pluses: our unbridled energy, youthfulness, informality, warmth, and our trademark arms flung wide welcome. As my neighbor spoke, however, I felt a few prickling stings of discomfort. I had left senior proms behind long ago, and Miles blue ribbon what? And brownies and Tupperware and chewing gum? What's more important is that beneath that stinging discomfort was an uneasiness that this woman, nice and bubbly as she was, assumed I understood all those cultural cues, that I still owned them, that they were mine, that they were me. You're just going to love it, she chirped, and on love, she clapped her hands, gave a little hop, and then she jogged away, calling back over her shoulder, there's no place like home. Home. From the first week, this new world was the land of the home. After moving from rental to rental our whole married lives, we had now finally bought a home, our American home. Then we threw ourselves headlong into renovations. Floors, walls, shelving, a fence, even an updated kitchen. All of this was an overt tactic to bind ourselves to one place. A house, our theory went, would make us at home. So what do those places have that the states don't? Our electrician asked from under his baseball cap with its American flag embroidered on the brim. I'd made the mistake of mentioning that, although everyone was welcoming us home, I didn't feel like I was quite, there. He peered at me a bit askance, wanting to know what would make me desert my homeland and become, in his words, an expatriate. This was the time frame, mind you, during which U.S. military troops had invaded Iraq, and the world we'd been living in had not been unanimously behind the policy. France and Norway and virtually all of Europe had been ferociously opposed to the U.S. intervention. Still waiting for those weapons of mass destruction to turn up, and in response to the international criticism, some Americans had turned French fries into freedom fries or poured French wines into gutters. At a time when you were either with the US or against, we kept our voices low when we spoke anything but English in public. Parker was immediately called Frenchie at middle school. That had been a 2% rotation rate, meaning people were born there, schooled there, and, like our kind brownie-bringing neighbor, either never moved away or did so only for school, returning afterwards to raise the next generation in the same zip code. Our children were caught unprepared when everyone but they knew to stand in perfect formation at the beginning of the school day and recite in unison, verbatim, Mom, Claire said later through gritted teeth, an allegiance chant. Parker cut in, all gluey and sullen. I had to lip sync, Mom, he went on. They had never heard it, never even known it existed, and how would they have? Then the girls on the elementary school playground were tittering about someone named Lizzie. Her clothes, her hair, the way she talked, what she'd done this week and the week before, and what she might do next week. And Claire, a month into this new world, interrupted to ask, so, who's Lizzie? Is she new here at school like me? At which all the girls stared and laughed. Lizzie McGuire, Mom, Claire told me later, not crying but looking stern, like an anthropologist who's just spotted a member of an endangered species. Lizzie McGuire. We have got to get American TV. Even second grader Dalton was having his own adjustment issues, and Luke was forgetting his playground French while learning Spanish at preschool. At 13 going on 14, Parker would probably have been riding the plate tectonics of an identity crisis anywhere, but here in the US, he was trying on wardrobes and body postures and accents to fit in. When folks asked where he was from, he never mentioned a word about his real upbringing and would no longer speak anything but English with us, although we had always hopped from Norwegian to French to English in our home. In our private conversations, and to keep secrets as a family when outside, it seemed he had made an overnight decision to be a new person. Where, Parker? Where'd you just tell that guy at the gas station you were from? Fully, he tipped his head, on which he now wore a flat-rimmed cap tilted strategically to one side. Fully Delphia. My son, the one who had once paraded in traditional embroidered costume on Norway's National Day and learned colloquial French from his buddies at Versailles Club du Basquet, had morphed in the course of exactly 0.6 minutes into a boy from the hood, from Fully Hood. After writing an essay for entrance into an honors English course for his school, Parker reported to me how it had gone. So, ça va, mon coeur? How'd it go? It's all right, I guess. I finished the thing, wrote 3 full pages. Sounds good. What did you write on? Eve. Eve? As in Eve? Adam and Eve? Eve? Yeah, Eve. He adjusted the cap and let his oversized pants bunch sufficiently around his untied basketball shoes as he climbed out of the minivan and strode through the garage and the mudroom door. My boy from Fully. I watched him from behind. Where'd this kid materialize from? As in, you wrote about the Bible story? Or, what? I kept smiling, trailing him, nodding to remind him to remove his shoes, which had never been a question in our past homes, but now was just one more thing, the kids said, that made us weird. Taking it easy, I unloaded groceries on the card table since the kitchen counter had been removed for the redo. I knew that I was now in a country where the separation of church and state is at times maybe a bit smudgy. But Eve? They gave me 3 choices to write on, Parker said. I picked describe the life and accomplishments of your favorite first lady. And Eve, she was the first lady, the only one he knew of. We contacted an intercultural integration specialist. Part of the trouble is that we feel like aliens, I told the woman in our first phone interview. 5 months of home soil and we are still invisible aliens. Invisible aliens? She asked. Foreigners, but no one can see that. Oh, and how could they? Didn't we sound American, look American, carry American passports, pay American taxes? Couldn't we sing at the drop of a hat the theme song from the Brady Bunch? Weren't we American? Well, aren't you Americans? The consultant pushed just a bit further. Her laugh had a little bit of an edge. Of course, yes, of course. I guess I added, but I was confused. I no longer knew what that meant. I realized that expressing a deep connection to, or even a preference for, aspects of another culture besides my American one seemed to those who didn't feel the same pretentious or worse, traitorous. Hold on, we'd been Amerikanern and Die Amerikaner and Les Américains for so many years. Representatives of our homeland went outside of it. This put us on the outer edge of the native center of any culture we lived in. No matter how perfectly we rolled our R's or pinched our vowels or sucked our raw shrimp eggs right from the tail, no matter that we could rattle off every Charles or Louis since Charlemagne, no matter that we knew the origins of every cheese at the local fromagerie, we still hadn't been born there, weren't native. The odd thing was, we knew how to be that kind of American in that setting. We knew how to be internationalists, those people who speak with accents and are always figuring out the mechanism of a new place, always, to one degree or another, peripheral, displaced. But this, we had no idea. Maybe it will help to talk about what you missed from the States when you were abroad, the integration expert suggested. Most people in your situation have been aching to get back home, even if just to small things, certain people, favorite places, or something as simple as snack foods. Let's start there. What were you homesick for? I wasn't. Okay. I could hear her taking notes. But your kids, I'll bet they... No, nothing. Even speaking with each of us, children included, individually and at length, seemed to help us adjust. In her defense, I'm convinced no one could have, because the truth of the matter is that we weren't coming home. I focused my intensity, which for 10 years had been revving on all cylinders due to all the demands of living in new cultures, on our children. Volunteering and the house project. For 8 months spanning the dead of winter, I oversaw everyone's cultural adjustments, as well as structural house renovations, all while serving up frozen pizzas zapped in a microwave, rigged in the garage. Late March marked 8 months in the homeland. Winter had just thawed. The sawdust had just settled. And on a brisk morning, I found myself hanging planters of red geraniums around the front porch. I pounded in a dozen support hooks, pinning us permanently, even sacramentally, onto the local map. Around me was Pennsylvania at her most promising, no longer a Currier and Ives winter wonderland, but the spring version with its slow, loamy explosion of greening and more greening. Tapping the hammer, I ticked down the list of pluses. The neighborhood kiddie soccer league, the drive-through food, pharmacies, photo shops, post offices, the 2 or even 3 car garages, and the expansive redwood decks, the cheerful and efficient grocery store cashiers, and the pimply teens who packed our load and accompanied you all the way to your trunk, the Phillies, Eagles, Flyers, and Sixers fans who came bearing brownies, the Main Street parades, a phenomenon called Costco, only 20-minute drive away, the undeniable traction that a societal system has when there are ample funds and oodles of optimism. America's abundant pluses, including her magnificent energy and enterprising people, her head-spinning conveniences and collective casualness, a world and quality of life that would make just about anyone melt into one long cleansing sigh. And sigh I did, but it was a cry sigh. That morning until afternoon, under the eaves of our porch, with my back to the cul-de-sac so no neighbors could see my face, I pounded in those planter hooks one by one. Pound, pound, pound. Sniff, sniff, sniff. With each successive strike, I struck a nerve that grew more tender. My whole soul was wincing. Just that morning, I had been hunting in the checkout line for a hint. Any hint anywhere of a foreign accent. In the aisle walled in on both sides with boxes of cold cereal, I was still pining for the musty smell of the tiny corner market run by a cranky Moroccan, for pungent cheeses sold by someone who knew me by name, and a bakery that closed every day at noon for an hour-long lunch and all day long every Sunday. I was searching for something that smelled like home, sounded like home, felt like home. I stepped inside my home, nose in the air. I whiffed. There was the smell of a new kitchen. I saw each of the Norwegian touches, French touches, provincial pieces, and Italian pottery, an old Swiss cowbell holding back the hand-me-down Scandinavian linen drapes. The setting was modest, tasteful, and most importantly, trying to tell the story of who we were, tell our intense, bold-faced, far away from here story. Then I knew it. That story is over. I wanted to sob, but I couldn't because the phone rang. Hun, can you meet me at the bottom of the hill? I'm almost home. Come alone. From my journal. The hardest moment was in our bedroom tonight. We had already told Parker by himself, which was a good move. We just knew he'd be ecstatic. But C was just finished doing Marion the Librarian in The Music Man, and just last week we promised her a dog. Finally, the dog she's waited a decade for. For D and L, we would just announce the choice when we'd made it, not discuss it, so we didn't involve them at first. P and C were sitting on our sofa. We told them that we had big news but wanted to discuss it. This isn't final, kids, we said. Want to get your reactions. And when we told C, she immediately glazed over and then her eyes welled up. P put his arm around her and she just started crying. I don't want to go back. We just got here. She fell into P's arms, bawling. I think I gave R an evil look, and I know I lipped to him. This means no go. We kept trying to reassure her. We haven't said yes to a thing, we said. We've just been asked if we could go back to take over another position, middle of Paris this time. We are free to say no, we said. We'll never do something that makes all of us miserable and that we feel no spiritual confirmation about. We walked around and around the backyard, next to the split rail fence, barely 6 months new, past the new shed with the shiny copper weather vane, standing so silently up there like a rooster afraid of a cock-a-doodle-doo. Our sweet, distraught C we held between us, our arms wrapped around her shoulders, listening as she cried out all the reasons why back to France was all bad, all wrong. All bad, all wrong, she kept crying, stopping to catch her breath, to bend over and then shake herself upright. It broke my heart. I wanted to weep too, but held it in. I believed her. I felt how selfish it would be to pluck them out of this American dream. And dang it, all those geraniums on the wraparound porch, gorgeous. Why would we ever head to where things were, as Claire knew, much harder? The edges harder, the expectations harder, the language harder, the traffic and school and rules and sky and air and everything she said harder. What happened when Claire went alone into her room is something Randall and I didn't ask or even hope for. We sat, nauseated and sweaty, conflicted and brokenhearted, hands between knees, rocking back and forth on the edge of our bed. So what, we said to each other, if the company has an acute and special need? So what if that need is, as they assert, tailor-made for Randall's expertise. So what if this would only be a couple of years and then we would come right back to home, yard, cul-de-sac on the hill, corporate headquarters? So what? I said. So what? He said. So what? Then Claire knocked on our door. Mom? Dad? She came with news that was a turning point and a landmark to which our whole family years later still refers to in whispers. She sat between us on our bed. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked at us both, eyes red and puffy. She told us she'd run while holding back tears to her girlfriend down the road. That friend, whose parents were in the middle of a horrible divorce we had not known about, had reassured and comforted Claire and listened as her new friend cried. When Claire had dumped out enough of her sadness that her shoulders weren't heaving under the weight, her friend promised Claire she'd give her a Phillies t-shirt as a souvenir. I guess they don't have them back in Paris, right? She then sent Claire home with one of her mom's brownies to curb the hurt. Claire had then come back home to her snug corner bedroom, the one we decorated to her specs in soft lavender and custard yellow. She told us that she had knelt at her bed, the one for which we'd found 4 sheets with small embroidered Eiffel Towers, and she'd prayed, not for an answer, to move or not to move. That was not the question, but for a simple comfort in this challenging moment. It was then that she felt the warmth and heat wrap around her 12-year-old shoulders and a voice. She felt it. She didn't hear it. Told her clearly that though this would be hard at the start, over the long one, it would be the best thing for the family. Yes, we would all move back to Paris. That was well over 15 years ago. We packed up the week school ended and moved to an apartment in the heart of Paris and rented out the fresh renovated American home to U.S. expatriates returning from 3 years in Asia. Only a couple of years later, and without much discussion or deliberation, we quietly sold that American house. Because we knew where we were at home on the road. From Paris, we moved to Munich, and from there to Singapore, and from there to Geneva, and from there to Frankfurt, all the time paying American taxes, all the time participating in American elections, all the time being identified as American, but not the homegrown variety. We are American globalists who have never returned to corporate headquarters, nor to the weather vane, the geranium hangers, the sweet lavender yellow bedroom, the Homeland. Claire went on to university studies, during which she spent extended stretches living in Africa and Italy, and it was there where she met her Italian husband. She, like her brothers, went on to embrace the world as her home. So then, where is your home exactly? The kids get the question a lot. They've learned to say, home is the people I love, and they're everywhere. Maybe where is home is itself an inadequate or altogether wrong question to ask in the first place. Home means something different than a where. It's not a structure, not an address, not a city, not even a country. I'm beginning to wonder if home is even a place at all. Home, perhaps, is a disposition of the soul, an acknowledgement that I share with another soul, a certain intimate narrative, that story, twists and curls and splutters and flows, folding back on itself, defying conventional chronology, suggesting timelessness while weaving the strands of our most consuming questions and even exploring those questions for which we have no language yet. Home, then, might be the nexus of many individual narratives, not a fixed port, but a portal through which lives have passed and are passing, seeking definition and connectivity. Home, for me at least, has come to mean that sense of intertwining, of unity and comfort, a state of being where you no longer need to tug at the seams and headline of your spirit to feel at ease. It's when you feel something deep and native within you expand, enlarge, illumine. This year, my husband and I crossed over that telling meridian that marks more years lived outside our country than within it. After 26 years of creating so many homes in so many countries, you'd think we'd be tired, ready to settle on one place, one home. Well, we have, I think, and it's the world. Melissa Dalton-Bradford is an author, poet, polyglot, international consultant on intercultural integration, a founding member of 2 nonprofits, mother of 4 children, 3 of whom are living, and a committed world citizen. She's married to Randall, with whom she shared over a quarter century living in Scandinavia, Central and Southeast Asia, and Central Europe. Melissa currently resides in Frankfurt, Germany, where she's writing every day and volunteers, teaching German to and documenting firsthand stories of Middle East and African refugees. And now here's the coaching. Melissa's story reflects many of the challenges that individual family members can face when an entire family returns together. Each person was in a unique situation, and the adults were called to not only process their own reentry, but also support their children simultaneously. Melissa and family sought out expert advice by hiring an intercultural integration specialist who asked some difficult questions. Melissa kept herself narrowly focused. She chose 3 primary interests to focus on during reentry: her children, her volunteering, and engaging in projects around their home. When faced with relocating once more, she and Randall were committed to finding a resolution that felt right for their entire family. They were willing to wade through emotions and stress to live inside the question until the answer was evident for all to see. Now, here are a few reflection questions. What 2 or 3 things can I or we focus on that will make my or our reentry simpler? What support do I or we need, and where can I or we find it? As a family, what guiding principles do we need to agree on? Thank you for listening to this recording. If you have any questions about this story or anything else that has to do with repatriation, please contact Doreen and myself, and we will get back to you. We'd also love to share your thoughts or additional questions with the audience. So please contact us with any that you have. Thank you. Bye.